I am here vibing with one of Jamaica's music's most soulful soul, a multi-talented Jamaican musician. She has to her credit two of the biggest songs coming out of 80s reggae. Her parents named her June Carl Lodge, but we know her as
J.C. Lodge.
Lady J.C. Absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Oh, wow. Thank you. You saved that for on camera. Wow. Good.
It's good to see you.
Yes, good to see
man.
you too.
Talk
in
to
the flesh.
In the flesh, yes, man. Yes.
Telephone love, you sound so sweet on the line. Telephone love, you make my day every time.
Reach them! Always make sure the message reach them!
So talk to us though, early life, place of birth.
I was born in Kensington in London.
It was Kensington.
To a Jamaican dad and an English mum. They stayed together for about 3 years and then they split and I stayed with my dad. My mother, I don't know, I resented for years the fact that she left me with my dad. I can't understand how any mother leaves their child. But I met her later in life and I've now developed a relationship with her and she's explained to me that, you know, how my dad was. Yes. My dad was very loving, but he was also quite cruel, and that's the truth. So I don't hold it against her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cruel to her.
Yeah,
okay.
And cruel to me.
Oh, yeah?
But very, very loving. So don't get me wrong, I loved my dad.
Very paradoxical.
He was. He was full of fun, you know, he was like a child in
a
way.
Okay.
Full of fun and pranks and, you know, just loved to laugh and very charming, had a lot of friends. But he had this cruel streak.
He would have been a member of the Windrush generation.
He didn't come on a Windrush ship, but he came somewhere around that time. Because I was born 58, so he came somewhere in the early 50s, mid-50s, somewhere around there.
And you were because eventually you migrated to Jamaica.
Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
10.
10.
My dad decided one day, you're going to... Well, he told me we were coming here on holidays. I was all excited. Yeah, we're going on holiday. I told all my friends. And he left me here. He left me here with his family. And went back because I think it just became too hard for him to have me as a girl child. Because we lived in one room, you know.
Okay.
And he fostered me out, so I was living with a white English family during the week to go to school because my dad worked full-time as an electrical mechanic. So, but I just remember there were people that would come by every now and again when I was with my dad, like on holidays and stuff, where I lived with him full-time. And they'd come and, you know, have some private talking with him. So I think it wasn't kosher.
Okay.
Because we slept in the same bed, we bathed in the same bath, everything, and I'm like 10, you know?
Right.
Yeah, so anyway, that he didn't give me that as a reason. He told me that they've got better schools in Jamaica. So I came to live with my aunt and my 2 lovely cousins.
Where in Jamaica was that?
That was in Havendale.
Havendale?
Yes.
Uptown.
Yeah. So I went from living in a one room with my dad to being considered an uptown girl, which I found very bizarre, you know. When people always say to me, "Oh, you're uptown girl, man," you know, I just think you don't know my background.
Yeah. So let's go back to London a little bit though. So you started school any at all? You went to school any at all there?
Yes, I went to infant school and junior school, and I had friends there. But when I was in school in England at that time, there were mostly white children, no Indian. There were like maybe 3 black children in the entire school I was in.
Entire school?
And I was one of them. Yeah. Right? I'm not all that black looking, but I'm black. I consider myself black, you know. So I got teased a lot. And when I say teased, I mean hurtfully teased. I cried a lot about that.
The racism was rife at the time, does it seem?
Very much. There's still racism in England, but they've put it under the carpet a bit, you know, so you don't see it so much, but it's there.
So when you settled in Jamaica now, where did you attend school?
So when I came here, my aunt, my dad must have had a talk with her, and she said, all right, we'll make sure to get her into a good school. So they put me in St. Cecilia Prep.
Okay.
And then when I came at age 10, I was always very good at English because my dad used to ask me how to spell to help him because he wasn't an educated, academically educated, but he was an excellent electrical mechanic. So he would often ask me to spell things for him, and I felt good. Yeah, I can spell for my dad. But my maths was atrocious. So when I came to Jamaica, they put me in a class with the 6-year-olds. Right?
And you were 10.
And I was 10. So I had a lot of catching up to do. Yeah, I had a lot of catching up to do. And I remember when I turned 11, my aunt asked the headmistress if I could do the common entrance. And she said, give her another year, because they had their record and they didn't want me to take it and fail. So I was always a year behind everybody else in my class when I got to high school.
Yes.
Yeah, so all my high school graduates.
And the high school was which?
Alpha Academy.
So, coming to Jamaica, what was it like, though, now, settling into life here?
Oh, very, very different. And being left with, I mean, it was my aunt and my cousins, but they were strangers at the time, you know. So I didn't want to stay, and I was begging my father not to leave me and all of that. But, yeah, I was left, and it was a shock to the system, because I had left all the foods and stuff that I was used to, because remember I was living with the white family during the week, so I was used to the fish fingers and mashed potato and that. The
English type.
And that's what I liked.
Okay.
And then that's what I liked. You know, my dad's Jamaican cooking was like too spicy.
Yeah.
So I missed the food. The music I was used to, growing up with my dad, he was a music collector, so he had a lot of jazz and Jamaican music. So I did have exposure to that, and pop music. So my favourite group was the Beatles. And all the pop music in England at the time, but I also loved jazz from some of my dad's collection. So then, being left here now, I mean, Jamaican radio was still playing foreign music, so I still heard some of that, but it just wasn't the same. And then when I started to hear the
what is that?
I remember having to, my cousins were trying to teach me to do the reggae, and, you know, and so at first that was very alien to me. And what else was strange? Oh, the night sounds.
Crickets and stuff.
Yes, I loved that. I loved it. And the heat. And then I was really, really pale. I mean, I'm not dark now, but then I was even paler. And yes, and the mosquitoes had a feast. I remember that.
Yes. So you just, kind of took me somewhere that I was going, where your early introduction to music, as you said, it was through Dad and through the radio, and you love the Beatles.
Yeah.
But now, when did that started to take root within you to say, okay, yeah, I listen to this, I hear this, but there's also some music in me that needs to come out? Like, when did that dawn on you? It took a long time.
That was a long time coming, because Dad never, even though I used to sing along to songs and he would enjoy me doing that and we'd sing things together, he never said to me, you sound quite good or anything like that. So nothing like that was in my head. I was just a normal child growing up. I loved acting and I loved art, and when I was in England, I was mostly doing art. And then when I went into high school, my classmates would hear me singing in the classroom and they'd say, boy, you sound like the radio, you sing such and such, and it was like
the
that.
radio.
Yeah. And then they would put me on to the whatever concerts we had at school. But I'm still very shy to perform singing.
Oh, yeah?
Acting, I don't feel as shy, but for singing, I always feel shy, nervous.
So singing wasn't your first love?
For me, I loved it for myself.
Oh, you loved it but not to
perform to other people. I didn't see it in that way, So they'd had to beg me to be on these concerts, and I'd say, oh, all right. But so I loved it, but I didn't see that as a career. I thought I'm going to do drama or something in art. And then along came Mr. Errol O'Mealy.
Well, so I find it Errol. Yeah, Errol of R.
Eh?
I find it Errol.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I said to me.
Yes.
What?
One man. Yeah, well, one serious.
Okay, I understand.
To get to that point.
So here comes Errol.
So here comes Errol O'Mealy. We're both teenagers, and he's got the gift of words. When he speaks, when he writes, I'm like, wow,
Wow.
No, I have lyrics. So then he said to me, he writes songs. I said, really? So he showed me the lyrics, which looked very good, and then he started trying to sing them to me because he said he heard me singing just around the place, you know, and I can carry a tune well enough, you know, so would I sing these songs on a cassette? At the time it was
A demo.
ordinary tape cassette, which young people don't know about anymore, and would I record his songs? So he's singing these songs to me and I'm going, you mean, and he goes, no, that's not what I did. I said, well, that's exactly what you did. So, you know, because he's a little bit tone deaf. So I say it was trial and error.
Right,
that's what I call it, trial and Errol. But
Trial and error.
Yes, but we got there in the end. We figured out, you know, finally, yes, that's what I meant, you know. And we got these songs down. I don't remember how many there were, 6 to 10, I don't remember, but we got them on cassette. He banged out the rhythm on the tabletop and I put harmonies on. I just always could do harmonies, you know, and nobody taught me that. And then, so we ended up with this cassette with songs, and the idea was to, who could we find in the music business that might be interested in recording one of these songs? So we started, you know, giving it to different people, and we lived at the time on Holborn Road.
Okay.
Tradewinds Apartments, and a lot of musicians lived there.
Okay.
Allah from Chalice, Trevor from Chalice, different people passed through. And so Allah was the first port of call, you know, anybody that we can.
Right.
So he started, you know, Clive Hunt and Stephen Stewart, I think it was.
Okay.
He got to listen to, and a few other people. Anyway, long story short, it ended up at Joe Gibbs' studio, this cassette. And E.T., Errol Thompson, who was Joe Gibbs' right-hand man, engineer, person, took the tape and he said he was going to listen to it. And so we must come back. And that coming back went on for months. That time, Errol and I, we used to take off time off of work to go to the studio and hang around in the yard waiting. Are they going to call us today? Has somebody listened to this tape? Is somebody going to sing one of these songs? Went on for months. Anyway, eventually, we didn't give up. We had we really wanted somebody to appreciate these songs because we thought they were very good songs. So eventually, one day he came out and he said, Errol Thompson, and he said to me, was who sing Pan Tape? And I said, that was me. And he said, I want to record something with you, you know? And I said, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't the intention, but all right.
Yes.
And the first song that they presented to me was, Do That To Me One More Time.
Okay.
And, you know, so that was my first experience of recording in a studio. I was petrified.
Oh, you actually recorded that song?
Recorded it for them. Learned it at home and just went in and sang this thing. And first time in a studio, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Anyway, did it, and they liked it, but they only released that song in the Bahamas.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if it was an experiment or what, but then after that they came back to me and said, okay, we have another song for you, Someone Loves You Honey, to cover it in reggae. So we were saying to them, but what about the songs on the cassette? That was what we came to you with. Right. And they didn't pay them any mind at that point, but eventually they did put.
Oh, they came around. Okay.
On my first album. So I ended up recording 3 of those songs on my first album, Someone Loves You Honey album. But before we even got to that, Someone Loves You Honey, the single just came out September 1980. We were listening to the radio. It
was Errol that took your voice for that track?
Yeah.
Who played on there?
This is the funny thing now. It's bizarre. Because we were green to the industry, we didn't know who was who. Oh, so there's some controversy over it because Clive Hunt says that he produced it, right? Oh. But Willie Lindo also says he produced it. Oh. And neither Errol nor I can remember.
Who was it?
Yeah, who was in charge? We don't really remember.
Okay.
But, I think Winston, what was Winston's, well, I used to call him Dirty Jaws. What was his last name? Winston Wright, I think.
Winston Wright.
On it.
Dirty Jaws.
Yeah. And Mikey Boo was on the drum.
Mikey Boo as well. Okay.
I'm sure he was doing the drum. Willie Lindo. Willie Lindo was involved in it. He produced it, but he didn't play the guitar. Oh, okay. The guitar was Lennox Gordon. Oh. I'm just naming these things because I've had these conversations with Willie because I've had to go back now to research it myself because I don't remember who was involved, you know. Yeah. It's so long ago and we didn't know anybody then. Yes. Yeah.
You
so
played on that.
I played the mouth organ.
You played the mouth organ.
Yeah, singing.
And that
No,
track?
singing. Only singing.
Singing. Okay, okay.
I didn't play anything.
Yeah.
I don't play an instrument.
You don't play an instrument?
No.
Well,
Nowadays, when I'm working out my songs, I
Right.
can kind of find a few simple chords, but I'm not a musician, so
Okay.
I can't stand to hear myself play because I'm hearing it in my head, you know, and what I'm putting down is, yeah, that's near it, but that's not the chord I want, so I just want the best
yes.
guys to take it from me, you know.
So let's go back to that song now. Someone Loves You. Charlie Pride was the original
He was a singer of it.
Right, not the writer of the song,
No,
right?
no.
But based on the research now, there were a number of things that developed out of that song. Because what was the situation with Joe Gibbs and you at the time, though? Was it a situation where you were compensated for your work on the track? Was it a situation where you were signed to Joe Gibbs?
We did sign some contract, but it was some rip-off contract. We got very little, some small advance, and that was it. We never saw anything else from him.
Oh.
And he put his name on the label as a writer.
Joe Gibbs said him write the song
Yes.
where Charlie Pride did sing?
Yes.
Run on part.
Yes, the writer was Don Devaney. Don Devaney
Okay.
was the writer. But Joe put his name on it. I think not thinking anything of it. He probably did that all the
okay.
time. I don't know. It's just just put my name on everything. But because the tune got so big, it was discovered and he was sued.
Oh.
And you have people that used to say to me, "Why am here them sue you?" I said, "Me? Why would they be suing me? I didn't do anything wrong.
Yes.
I just sang a version of the song." But you know, Joe said he wrote it, so he lost a lot of money, so much that he had to close down his business.
But out of that, though, came your first album as well.
Yes.
And you said 3 of the songs that were on the demo
Yes.
were actually re-recorded and placed on the album.
Yes.
And so that album was released through Joe Gibbs.
Yes, that's right.
Someone Loves You. First album, first big song. How did things change for you and Errol at the time, though? Because I don't know if you guys were expecting
Not at
that the
all.
thing would blow up so
Not at
quickly,
all.
so big.
No, not at all. We were shocked. And then there was a lot that we didn't know because we were just based in Jamaica. There was no internet to look up and see what's happening in England or
Yes.
anything like that. It's just word of mouth, you know. And at some point I remember my dad telling me, "Listen, this song is big here, you know. You need to come over and support it." I'm like, "Dad, how am I going to come over there? Who's paying for that?" You know. So we didn't go. Joe Gibbs wasn't.
So Joe Gibbs wasn't funding that?
No. It was selling, and he was happy with the amount of sales that were going on, and you know he was making his money that way. And because recently Errol was having, I keep turning this way because Errol is here off camera, but Errol was having a conversation with Clive Hunt, and Clive said that Joe deliberately kind of quashed it. He didn't want it to reach like top of the pop status and all that because he had written that he on the label that he wrote it. So he was quite happy with the
makes sense.
sales that were
Makes
just
sense.
going on consistently, but not.
So here you are, big song, big song, probably the biggest song one of the biggest songs in the country at that time.
Yeah.
Were you benefiting financially from that song any at all? From the album,
I mean,
any at
apart
all?
from having a show here and there, and then the joke of it was that because I was so afraid of performing,
You're still shy.
I was shy, so I wasn't really because when the tune became Song of the Year in the Netherlands,
Right. Yes.
and I got a gold and a platinum disc. There was demand for me, you know, and the record label sent for us,
Right.
and they said, you know, we can set you up on a tour. How many shows you're interested in? And I was like, shows? Oh God! And I said to Errol, can we not do more than about 12? It was so. When I look back now, I just want to kick that person, you know. What an opportunity!
So that song and the album, by extension, took you to the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So that was the first place you went to perform outside of Jamaica?
Yes.
But even before that, where was the first, you then call it, big stage that you went on to perform in Jamaica?
Carib, was it a Carib? Clancy, a Christmas show.
Okay. But now you flying out for the first time because the song blew up in Holland, as we say, in the Netherlands.
And in all the Caribbean communities
Oh,
worldwide.
okay. So you went to the Netherlands and you performed.
I did.
How was
And
that
let me just
experience?
say as well, because we have to give everybody their due. The track that made it in the Netherlands had Prince Mohammed on
Right,
it.
because I was going to ask you,
Yes.
whose idea was it to do that?
That would have been Joe or E.T. or I don't know.
So is a situation where you guys recorded it together in the studio, or they just put it
They
together?
just put it together. But I think that's how the toasting
It worked at the
part was done
time.
in those days. The singer did
I
their
understand,
bit.
I
Some
understand.
other point there. Yeah, we're going to put so and so on it. You know, Trinity or.
So
whatever.
that was explained to you guys before, or you just see it and
No, we just heard it. Wait, who's that?
oh, so it was a version with Prince Mohammed that really
made
took
it
off in the Netherlands.
In the Netherlands,
Okay.
they loved it, and then because they had the link with Joe,
Right.
I don't know what transpired between them to when they were talking about touring, because really they should have gotten in touch with Prince Mohammed so that he could be
On the tour as
appearing
well,
with
yes.
me, but
Was he alone?
nothing was said to him.
Okay, so I've seen a video with you and Prince Mohammed perform.
Prince Mohammed in quotation. So that guy was a young Surinamese person.
I have the jot down say the Prince Mohammed where me know
Yeah.
is George Nooks.
Yes, the one and only. There's no other Prince
So
Mohammed.
how
in
come
reggae.
me see one next brother now up on stage
Yes,
beside?
right.
Very nice JC Lodge.
Right. So the record company that was doing the distribution found him, and they said, all right, you're going to do some appearances on TV, so we've got somebody, he's great, he's learnt the part. I'm like, where is he's from Suriname, and he's learnt this part that's being done in like patois, you know. Anyway, he just mimes it. He mimed to it.
It was lip sync.
Yes, and I have to say he did a pretty good job.
But see, I said then I want Prince Mohammed, you know, and a George Nooks. So
Yes.
who is this fellow?
Yeah.
So I'm happy to ask.
So it's a shame, really, that all these years I've never performed it with
George Nooks?
George Nooks, and one day I'd really like
That
to
needs
do
to
that.
change, man.
Yeah, man.
Eh? Oh, yes, it do it.
Yeah, but just to make it clear, it was not in our hands.
Yes.
We were brought over there. We were told what to do. We didn't know Prince Mohammed.
And you were a very young girl at the time, too.
Yeah. Yeah, so, because I have had a couple of comments saying, why she have that man up there and that's not, Prince Mohammed, and she should have do better than that, and, but it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah, I understand, man. Totally understand. But your time around Joe Gibbs was relatively short-lived. How long was that?
Just enough for him to rip us
Just
off.
enough.
And we realized, okay.
That's good.
Because he spoke so fatherly, he seemed like such a reasonable man. You wanted to be taken in and believe it. Oh, yeah, you're going to do that? Oh, that's lovely. But no, all girl. So, yeah.
But first album under the belt.
Yes.
First
Then,
show
because we
outside
met-
of Jamaica.
Yes.
Under the belt.
But because we met Willie Lindo
Okay.
there, he was the next person that we
Right.
gravitated towards working
So, but
with.
question though, was it because that song was recorded in 1980?
Yes.
And I think the next recording of sorts was 1985, thereabout.
No,
No?
not so long after.
Revealed.
Oh, that's the next album.
But that
you
was the
mean?
next album.
Yes.
Oh, so because what I got from the research is that because you felt a little bit hard done by how things went with Joe
Not a
Gibbs.
little bit.
Not a little.
A whole lot hard done.
You felt hard done by that situation. You probably had stepped back up a little bit and kind of got back in the groove in
We
1985.
weren't stepping back from
Okay,
music.
okay.
We just had to step back from him. And, we moved on to Willie. But, it takes time to...
Yeah, I understand.
to move
I
on.
understand. So now, eventually, you said you and Willie started to do some work.
Yes.
And the first body of work that came out of that would have been in 1985, the Revealed album.
Yeah.
And all of those songs were cover songs?
Some of them were. So Willie wrote some. Errol collaborated on, like, Make It Up To You. They both worked on that
Yes,
together.
Errol wrote some of those songs as well.
I definitely wrote. I can't remember all the songs on there. I'm not very good with remembering what songs are on what album.
Yeah, I understand.
I know some people can do that, but so he worked on Make It Up To You with Willie. What else? You have to tell me. I don't have the album.
Okay,
here.
okay.
Usually when I
We'll
do
go through
interviews, I
a
have
list of the albums still. We'll see what happened, right?
Yeah.
No, and I think how well did that album do compared to, your first taste of success with Someone Loves You, Honey?
Well, it didn't have a song on it that did as well as Someone Loves You Honey did. But Make It Up to You went #1 in Jamaica and probably in Caribbean communities
Oh,
around.
yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, man, Make It Up to You did well. And what else was on that? More Than I Can Say, #1.
Make It Up to You was #1? And
In Jamaica, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, man, it went
nice.
to #1 in Jamaica. And More Than I Can Say was a top 5 at least.
Yeah.
Top 4.
And you see, that is very important, because one of the things, and we stay about both here, Jamaica, that is, because I think a lot of people probably confine JC Lodge to Someone Loves You Honey and Telephone Love.
Oh, don't remind me.
And you see, you have another song that went to #1 in Jamaica.
Yeah, I do have a faction of people that love that. When they say, "Make it up to you, make it up to you." So you have pockets of people that have their favorite. But most of the time it's, "I love your songs." They say songs. And then you say, "Oh, what do you? Someone Loves You, honey." Okay.
And you see, that is why that is why I enjoy doing what I do, because you see, we get to bring to the people the fact that, okay, sometimes the artists, them really and truly far bigger than just the box, so you have them, To see another #1 in Jamaica, Make It Up to You. Oh, don't need to make it up to Lady JC.
And on every interview I said, please check out my YouTube channel, JC Lodge Music. I have 14 albums and a whole heap of singles I've done. We've produced ourselves or other producers have produced. And, I'm just longing for the day when I can do a show and feature some of these songs.
Yes.
Because most of the gigs we get, you have a limited amount of time.
Right.
And sing it,
the
it
catalog
them.
big.
Huh?
They say sing it, it them.
Sing it, it them. So, here we go.
You don't get to touch the catalog.
Yeah. And I'm a songwriter. I've been writing for years. And I know I write. I'm more confident in my writing than I am in my singing.
Oh,
I think I'm
Lady
a pretty
JC
good
is more
songwriter.
confident in her writing than she's in her singing.
I am.
Interesting.
So I am longing to be seen as a songwriter.
Yes.
And if people looked at my material, they would say, "Oh, but this song, is she right?"
When we finish today, them I go learn, man. We come ready, right? So I think in about 1987, you signed to Music Works. It was an official signing type, I think, and you were just doing some work around Gussie.
We signed per project.
Per project?
Like
okay. And I think coming out of the early stages of that relationship with Music Works was I Believe in You,
That's right.
Selfish Lover.
Yes.
So those songs, even though they weren't #1 songs, also got some love in the streets as well.
Yes.
See, again, the catalog is not just those 2 songs, right?
Yeah.
Then now, in 1988, another song to match in terms of success with your first hit song came about, Telephone Love.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that song?
After we did the project I Believe in You with Gussie, both Errol and myself felt that that album was very sweet and
soulful.
I know that I've got a sweet voice. That's what people always say. Oh, you have a sweet voice.
Soulful soul.
Yeah, but I've always wanted to do things with a little bit more edge. I like to be on a harder rhythm.
So you wanted to do some DJing?
No, I just wanted to
just
sing
a little bit more hardcore. Okay.
So we said to Gussie, that album was very sweet and sentimental, but how about us working on something with a bit more edge to appeal to a more urban market? So he took it on board, and he had a team of writers, and he spoke to Mikey Bennett was his #1 writer, Willie Lindo, also very good, and Carlton Hines. They came up with a piece of this song that they said was called Telephone Love. So one day I was at the studio, and they said to me, "Just go around the mic and sing a piece of this for us,
Right.
So I said, "A piece, but it's not finished." "No, man, we just want to hear, if it's in the right direction or something like that." So I went around and I sang a part of it, and they say, "Yeah, they think this can work." And I was saying to Errol, "That's not what I was thinking of, though. I was thinking of, because I'm thinking about Admiral Bailey and his jump up,
something
and I
up-tempo,
wanted
that
something.
vibe.
I'm thinking like that.
Yeah.
So Telephone Love wasn't in that pocket that I was feeling at the time. But when I got home and got into it more, then I could feel it, and it felt more like R&B reggae, you know. Then I got into it, so I appreciated it eventually. But at first,
At first,
I was like, not what I was thinking of.
And so a lot of the great songs go about still in the...
Yeah.
So eventually, you own the song.
Yes. Yeah. And then that gave us some good success in America.
Because that song too, apart from the fact that the song is a beautiful song, was on a rhythm where there were many songs as well.
Yes.
So each song was carrying the next song.
That's right.
So Gregory Isaac was there. Rumors. Telephone Love.
Lady G and Dean Fraser and all the people on it. Home Tea, I think.
Yes.
I can't remember everybody, but...
And this was one of the first Jamaican produced recorded song that kind of started to bridge the R&B gap in the United States.
Black Americans, they loved it. Yeah.
Because listen, if you listen to the song for the first time without a face, you'd probably, I guess probably the rhythm would tell us it's probably Jamaican, but the voice, you could easily pass it off as somebody doing music in the United States or England or one of them places.
When we started doing interviews in America, that was a common comment that this isn't reggae, that was R&B, isn't it? No, it's reggae.
So again, no, and so Someone Loves You was 1980, and in the same decade, you had a massive, because truth be told is that those two songs are songs that, so me have a little category, me have songs, classics. As long as music is played, those songs will play. You, the shy girl who first never really wanted to perform, now had two of the biggest songs in Jamaica's music history. How was that? How were you treating with that in terms of, with the popularity that came, with the access to this that came? Was it a situation where things were difficult to, stay grounded and stay focused, or it was just you and Errol going through?
It was a struggle all the way,
A struggle all the way.
Yeah, because nothing was bringing in any great funds,
yeah?
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to say too much, but we haven't made much from those record sales.
Oh, yeah?
No. But I've gotten exposure.
Right.
I've gotten to do shows, so, and dub plates. So, you make up for it in different ways, and I've built a career.
But I would assume, though, that the business side of it with Anchor would have been much better than with Joe.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that.
Okay. Understood. But you had big song a road now.
Yes.
Another big song a road.
You have to look at what you get from it.
Yes.
So I have benefited from it. So
and then I think eventually that song was remixed with you and Shabba. Whose idea was that?
Gussie must have been. Yeah.
And it's a situation where they just put it together, or you and Shabba was in the studio together?
I don't know if any of those collabs are ever with the two people singing at each other.
Okay. Probably
the
back then.
The only song I ever did like that was Sugar Mine.
Oh, yeah, we soon come to Sugar Mine song. Okay, so even the song with you and Tiger wasn't in studio?
No, but we asked for Tiger to be on that track. I wrote the song and I said I want Tiger to be on that.
We are going to pick up them things at Doggy Road still, Don't worry about it. But no, so Telephone and the remix with Shabba is, I guess a lot of people still call it Telephone Love, but it's Dep on My Mind, I think is the name of that. Big song.
Yes.
Big song.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think probably in hardcore dancehall, that remix is
the one they know more. Because sometimes when I perform, they say, boy, nice show, JC, but we just, you just need Shabba for come on. And
Shabba in there.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
And subsequently out of Telephone Love, the single came an album.
Yes.
Right. And that album now landed you in the sides of a record label overseas.
Yes.
I think there was
First Powwow took it up.
First Powwow took it up?
Yes.
Before Tommy Boy?
Yes. So they did a few sales and then I think they couldn't handle it. They couldn't,
Initially, Powwow picked it up.
Yeah.
And then eventually, you were signed to Tommy Boy.
Yes.
Is Tommy Boy a subsidiary of Warner Brothers?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, they are.
And it was the
Okay.
biggest hip-hop label
They
at
were
the
a
time.
hip hop
Alright.
label. Yeah.
Cool.
So it was unusual for them to be approaching me
Oh.
because they were a hip hop label.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So now, telephone love, you start get some telephone calls.
Yeah.
So you now became. So what was the structure of the signing per se? Was it a 3-album, 4-album deal, or what was it? What was it?
I think it was a 1 year.
1 year.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And out of that came one album, right?
Yes.
I think Tropic of Love.
Tropic of Love.
And then there was a song on Tropic of Love that did well. Home is where the art is.
Hurt.
It's where the earth is.
Yes. It's a pun. I played on the words, so I changed it to Home is where the heart is because it's a sad love song.
Oh.
Yeah.
So why me see it HEART somewhere?
Some
Never mind that. Well,
some
it's
people
okay.
say
It's
that,
okay.
Because that's the usual
Yes.
phrase, but I turned the phrase to.
And the reason
make
why
it
I
a sad
picked out
song.
that song is listen that song. It's really and truly full R&B.
It is, yeah.
Was that by design? Was that by request?
By design, I mean, Errol and myself have always loved music. We love reggae, but we don't only love reggae.
Right,
we love
right.
music.
Music.
So whenever we got a chance to produce, we wanted to be creative and
Right.
experiment. And I've written this song. I think this is how it should go.
Right.
You shouldn't write a song and it has to be done a certain way because you live in this country. You treat a song the way it needs to be treated to show it off to its best.
Right.
So that song was deliberately designed to be that way. And I think there were a couple other R&B-ish tracks on that album because we were given the advance to produce it.
Right.
So we had free reign. So we're like, yeah,
You like
we
that?
can get to do what we want,
Yes.
But in hindsight, although I loved those R&B tracks, I still do. I think they're good R&B tracks. I don't know if it was a good choice to mix the album like that and have too many genres on it.
Right.
Because it did create a problem in America where everything is so categorized, So I'd already had that success with Telephone Love. It's a reggae track. I'm a reggae artist. What is this album? So then the record company decided that Home is Where the Heart Is was going to be the leading track
on the
off of the
album.
album. So I ended up going to these radio stations to talk about Home is Where the Heart Is, but I'm a reggae artist, and there's
Right.
reggae on my album as well. So people were confused. So the marketing, I think, was an issue. I was sent out to do, live appearances, PAs in clubs in Middle America, doing the R&B tracks. But then that was kind of veering off of my path.
Right.
And we weren't being paid to do that because it's PA tracks. You're just financed to get there, but you're not earning from it. So we couldn't keep that going because Errol and I were full-time music. We had no other income.
Right.
So eventually we realized this can't work. We're not earning. We're promoting, which is good. You have to. But we have no income, so we asked for a release.
So you guys chose to opt out of the contract?
Yeah. When the year.
When the
was
year,
up,
right. So you
we
didn't seek an
want to-
extension or renewal of same?
No, and to be honest, I don't think they wanted to
Did you-
renew anyway because I don't know. The person who signed us really, or who was very influential in getting us signed, Ed Strickland. He left the company. He went to Madonna's company, Maverick. And so he was the one that believed in me as an artist and a project and had some ideas. And so when he left, we were kind of, there was nobody in our corner. So, I don't think they knew what to do with me anyway. So it was a mutual parting of the ways.
Okay. And I'm not sure if these are just singles or they are actual albums. To the Max.
That's an album.
That's an album.
And a track on it is called
To the Max. Whose album is that?
We produced that.
Oh, okay.
We started producing all the albums.
Yeah.
What, 4 or 5?
Yeah. Because we met RAS Records owner Gary Himmelfarb, Dr. Dread, and he liked us as artists and trusted us to produce albums. So he would fund these projects, and we would have that freedom again to be creative, which is what we loved, you know.
Special Request. It's an album as well.
Yep.
And that was 94. I think To the Max was 93. Special Request was 94. Then you had in 1996 Love for All Seasons. I think you did that with Mad Professor.
Yes, Ariwa. Yeah.
And that was an album.
That was an album. We went to England to work on that.
Oh, okay. You went back home, man.
Yeah. It's funny, I don't really think... I know people say home. Yeah, I suppose both places are home.
Right,
England
right.
and Jamaica. I have to
Accept that,
dual
yes,
citizenship.
yes. Love You More Than I Can Say. That was a singular album.
That's Love You More Than I Can Say. That's from the second album.
Oh, it's Special Request.
That's the name of an album, Special Request.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And Make It Up With You. We spoke about that.
Make It Up To You was on... Which album is that?
Reveal?
We did that for Willie.
Reveal.
Revealed.
Okay.
Yeah,
That was the
second
song
album.
that went number one.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So you see the research kind of come together now,
Yeah.
right? No, the research said that, I think it was in 1994, you had your daughter.
That's right.
Right, Gia, I think her
Yes.
name is. And it says that out of that now, you were inspired to do some kids-related material.
That's right.
Correct?
Correct.
And 3 body of work came out of that?
Yes.
3
albums.
It was 3 albums?
Yes.
Okay, so it says it was a songbook and a TV series. So
Not a songbook. It was 3. First it was on cassettes, and then we did CDs. So it was 3 different cassettes, 3 different CDs for different age group children.
right, so Sing and Learn was for the toddlers.
Sing and Learn was the name of the whole
Whole thing.
project.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And then
but the songs that I
segmented
came up
now.
with, yes, I came up with songs. I wasn't trying to think, okay, I'm going to do this for this age group. I just
Okay.
came up with songs.
Okay.
And then afterwards we decided, okay, that appeals more to this
Right.
age group, so we put this on this album, this one, you know. And it was born out of me trying to teach my daughter things. Like
Right,
she'd
right,
come and,
right.
Daddy, we're speaking, don't interrupt,
Right.
wait your turn. And I'm like, you know, if you want to say something, and it turned into a song, you know, and things
Yes.
like that. Please don't hurt the animals, and all
Right.
sorts of things like that. So it was like social skills more than
Okay.
academic. Yeah.
Mm.
Although I do have usual ABC and that kind of thing,
Right.
and colours song. But yeah, so we did that project because of Gia,
And that was produced by...
us.
Nice,
And
nice.
Chris MacDonald worked closely with us on that. He was our main musician.
Okay.
With our arrangements and ideas and my song melody and lyrics. So Errol did the production,
Okay.
and Chris was the main musician.
And I think the Ministry of Education
And
became
then-
appreciative of the work
Yes.
and ordered a copy
For
each
every basic
school.
Yeah.
That's not bad, man.
No, it wasn't bad at all. I was so proud of that.
That's not bad at all,
Yeah.
man. And,
And then
out of that now, I think TVJ reached out
Yes.
and you guys produced a 13-part series.
Yes.
Mm.
Sing and Learn. Sing
Sing
and
and
Learn
Learn.
with me.
And I think out of that also came an award from the Press Association of Jamaica and the
Yes.
Caribbean Broadcasting Union.
Yes.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
So where is that available now? Is that available outside
So,
of TVJ archive?
Oh, the show itself?
Yes.
That's something that we wanted to go to TVJ to discuss because we want to relaunch it.
That would
you know.
make sense.
We really want to relaunch it. You know, make the material
Available, right.
online, but also perhaps do another show.
Sure, why not?
You know? Yeah. Before I get too
Yeah, but that, you know,
decrepit.
I don't know that a lot of people realize that it's not just straight line music for JC.
It's still music though. It's
No,
still-
as in not, you know, that level of music.
Yeah.
You have done that body of work too.
Yes, yes.
Amazing, man.
It's funny because last night we did Wiki Wacky show.
Yes.
And a dread came up to me, nice, tall dread, and he said to me, oh, you know, you don't know how you touched me tonight because I grew up listening to your songs. You know, he was calling them nursery rhymes.
Nursery
I love
rhymes.
your nursery rhyme. I mean, we grew up on it. So it's like when we hear you sing, it just touched something in
Yes,
me. And
yes,
it was
yes.
so touching to me for somebody to say that, you know. Really warming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then now in because I think the series with TVJ was about 2000 thereabout.
Yeah.
So it was shortly
Yes,
before you
2000.
went back to England.
Yes.
So I think you went back to England late 2001.
Yes. That's
What motivated that change of scenery though?
There are several things, but the main thing was that we were struggling to survive.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was really concerned about the crime as well. I, wanted to see my dad and, various things. But the main thing was that we were finding it difficult economically. I wasn't getting as many shows as I had been. I used to paint and sell craft to tourist shops, and I found that was declining as well. And so it just got to a point where we had to
to relocate.
We had to jump ship, and we thought that it would have been a good thing, because we thought that England, which had been a huge reggae mecca
Market,
at one point,
yes, definitely.
we thought, well, at least, as soon as we get there, I can get on the circuit. So we
make some money.
We make some money. When we got there, wow, it was like a big bucket of water, cold water. Whoosh, welcome to reality. There is no circuit for you to be part of anymore. Reggae is not on the platform it used to be on anymore. So I remember I met Pingwing, who was a comedian. I don't know if he's known here, but he's a Jamaican, full Jamaican comedian, complete Jamaican jokes. And he was working a very small circuit, just working in little pubs where you get a couple £100 a night.
Right.
And he said to me, come, join me on some of these things and do your little show. And that's how I started in England. It was pathetic, really. I mean, I'm grateful to him to even have gotten that. But it's very sad. Very sad state of affairs.
So, Lady JC, because remember, you just told me that the TVJ collaboration was in 2000, but then you left 2001, which was a successful series. So how come you just... Why wasn't there a follow-up then?
Yes, so the reason was because we were so engrossed in that show and felt that it had so much potential, and we were given that feedback that it had a lot of potential, but we just couldn't get all the sponsors back on board. We had 5, we could only get 3. We were struggling to get the others, and we felt that they were being blocked deliberately because of some politics, like people wanted a cut or something like that. So we just couldn't get it back on board, and I couldn't see how we could survive at that point, because I wasn't getting the, my reggae shows had kind of slowed a bit for some reason. I mean, the music scene is like that. Sometimes it's a bit of a roller coaster. Yeah. So at that point, it just was a bit slow, and so without that program, we just couldn't see how we were gonna.
So that was part of what motivated the move back to. And when you went back to England, where did you settle?
So we went to West London, because that's where my dad was. Yeah, but we couldn't stay with him because he was just in a single flat. So
understand.
Stay with some friends.
And then eventually, whilst in England, you started doing some work with Jetstar.
Yeah.
And out of that came, I know there was a Reggae Country album.
Yes.
There's only one album that came out of that. What's the other one?
2. Reggae Country 2.
Oh, Reggae. So it's 1 and 2.
Yeah, but the first one was Reggae Country, because I don't think they knew there was going to be a 2. So it was just Reggae Country, and then they liked it so much we did another one.
Right. So, but eventually, though, I am assuming that things kind of started to fall into place, and the struggles weren't as bad.
That took a long time. I tell you, that move to England, we really felt it was a mistake. Yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing at all. It was very, very difficult to, re-establish yourself.
Yeah, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask, because when I was doing the research and it said, from 2001, Jamaica, for the better or the worst of it, is really and truly the mecca of the music, reggae, dancehall.
It is, there's no denying it.
Have you ever sat down, well, you just said that you think it was a mistake, but musically speaking, do you think that, leaving the heartbeat, the center of the music, would have helped to limit the progress that the musical career has made?
It definitely
it did.
Definitely did, but we just didn't have a choice at the time,
Understand.
And then once you start to resettle,
Yes.
then you kind of have to get on with that.
Right.
So, I was happy to do those 2 projects with Jetstar, though, because that gave me hope that I was still in the business,
Naturally.
And the only downside of it was that they were mostly cover songs. I think I got maybe 2 originals on, because I'm always striving to get my
the originals, yes.
on. That's what I'm about.
Right, and that's why you make money too, because the cover version and really you understand?
Yeah.
That give you name, popularity, but in terms of the bag,
Earnings,
originals.
Yeah. But the thing with Jetstar is that they did a lot of projects, and Danny Ray was one of their best producers, so I was happy to work with him on those 2 projects. But so they were well produced. I'm proud of them, but there's no marketing.
Right. That
it doesn't really
kind of limit the scope of the thing.
On YouTube, and that's it.
Understand. And I know at this point in time you have over, I think the number is probably 40. I have 12 in my notes, but I think it's at 14 and counting albums.
14,
so
yes.
a lot of work, man.
Yeah, and then lots more singles as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Catalog big lady JC.
Yes, it is a big catalog.
You're going to need a JC lodging concert, man, for people just come hear the catalog, man.
Yeah.
JC and friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, work on it, man.
Yeah.
And so, as we said earlier, learning the music, I know that we tend to box in people, and I think Someone Loves You and Telephone is the box that they have put you in, right? However, in the catalog, you have collaborations with giants. Tiger, Shabba, because you have 2 with Shabba, I think, Sugar Minor, Junex. So we're going to talk about some. So we talk about the Telephone Love remix already with Shabba, which is on my mind. But Love Me Baby featuring Tiger. Because you said that you requested the Great Man on that one. Yeah?
Yeah.
Where was that recorded?
At Gussie's.
Gussie? Oh, Anchor.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Music Works at the time. Right? Music Works.
Music Works.
Oh, cool, man.
Yeah.
And funnily, I'll be confess, I listened to that song for the first time whilst doing the research.
Oh.
Bad tune.
Yeah, man, I love that track. I love that.
Bad tune, man. Yeah,
I love Shabba too.
Yeah. So the next song with you on Shabba is Hardcore.
Yes.
Whose idea was that?
Gussie.
Gussie.
I say Gussie because I'm not there when it's being done.
Yeah,
so
I'm just naming
him, but I don't know if somebody else said, hey, why you don't do, but ultimately it's Gussie.
And then another song, Love You Like That, featuring Junior Kelly.
Ah, that was a Steely and Clevey.
Steely and Clevey
production.
Beautiful song.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now, out of the collabs, I think this is a song that probably resonates with me the most, is a song with you and Sugar Minor. Beautiful song, man. Yeah. Since you came into my life.
Yes, it was a lovely song. Mikey Bennett wrote that
song.
Oh,
Mikey. Beautiful song. Yeah?
And Sugar did a great job on it too.
No. So these are a list of people. Shabba, there are millions of artists who then love to do a song with Shabba. Tiger, Junior Kelly. Sugar Minor is not around anymore, but many artists would have loved the opportunity. And you did collaborative works with these people.
Is there? There are quite a few others.
Yeah, collabs with Richie as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, who else? Cocotti. Yeah, sweet Cocotti.
Yeah, Don Campbell, he's UK.
What a whole heap of collabs they have, Lady JC, man.
Yeah, lots of collabs.
You see, we do these things again, as me tell you, for people realize that the music is deep and broader than we think. As even doing the research now, I learn a lot of the names. You have to be deep in
somebody who likes to research. Right. Not John Public is not going to be researching and saying, let me see what else she does.
Yes.
They just go by what they hear.
Let me ask you a question though. And I know collaborations can be funny. It's about timing, especially if you're going to be in the same studio. It's about energy and vibration. Is there anybody who you haven't worked with collaboratively who you feel like you're then going to go mash up a rhythm with?
Well, I've always wanted to do a track with Maxi. And I wrote something recently that I don't know if he even heard it. But, I wrote this thing and it was supposed to be sent to him for his approval. And it hasn't gone anywhere. But we didn't get a no, he's not interested.
Right.
There was just no response. So I don't know. But that's something I've always
that would be nice.
wanted to
know
do.
that you say it, may I hear it.
Yeah. But more recently, I did a duet with True Vice.
Okay.
And it was Jammy's son, John, who
That produced it.
And everybody that I played it for, them, boy, what a wicked tune, man. And, I don't know if you've heard True Vice, but he's got a wicked voice.
Okay.
Really rough and, yeah,
True
it's
Vice.
got
I'll check it out.
power.
Yeah.
It sounds really good, but if you don't market these things, they go nowhere. Don't tell me that all you need is a good song. I can't stand when people tell me that.
No, that alone no work.
That is massive. That's only half of it.
Yes.
The other half is
Promotion and marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's recent times, I think it's called Over.
Oh yeah, I did that for Lion Face.
A Lion Face song.
Yes.
Okay, I think that song is doing well. New York side, stateside.
I think it's. I don't want to say. I think it's over.
Oh, yeah.
No song is over. I shouldn't say that. I'm making fun of myself. But it did well.
Oh, okay.
But we're all strapped for that financial
cash
backing to really launch things like a big label can do. So it's hard.
Yeah, I understand.
And I'm not the only one in this situation. I think a lot of us artists are in that position now where we make the music, it's good, you do what you can to get it on YouTube and you do your ads and whatever and get it to DJs and so forth.
One of them Hollywood production company I got reach out to a couple of sound check and something.
Some things just happen,
some
it's
big
just
game
a
studio.
luck.
You know when something good, and that is the thing, so I know that, they do the work and food need to go up on the table. But sometimes the food not come until down the road, and when the food comes, sometimes you need many tables, So I just think, understand? So good music, you do good music, and I know sometimes it can be disheartening because you're not getting the remuneration that you hope to get. Yeah. But sometimes you just never know.
It's very frustrating.
Never
let me tell you, I live it. It's very frustrating. I speak with other artists, and I know they're feeling the same frustration, but we love it so much that we still keep doing it, and we put out good quality stuff every time. So we're just waiting on that, whatever it is, a little bit of luck or whatever it is. I always remember Boris Gardner's I Want to Wake Up With You, which is a beautiful song. You would think that doesn't need anything to make it happen. But what happened for that song was a DJ in England dedicating it to the Princess Diana. And then because of that, it was just picked up and, just
everybody want to hear this song now. And that's how music works, man. So just go and do the music.
Yes,
but let me ask you another question. I know Errol has been there from high school, yeah?
Yeah.
But we know how the music's and the underbelly of the musical learning. And we know that, especially when you came in the music, you were a young, beautiful lady. And we know a lot of exploitation or attempts at exploitation. How was it for you navigating those musical streets as it relates to that?
Errol was always hitched up right beside me, so I know sometimes you get somebody coming over, boy, Jesus, or whatever, but I'd be going, Errol, speak to Errol. Yes, I was lucky that he was there every step of the way, And I know some guys would be, "What, this Errol, what are you doing with him?" But yeah,
man, them play their cars.
Yes, but we've stuck it through.
Yeah. And you have said a number of times that when you guys started out, you were young and you guys never knew a lot. How are things now in general now, not with the work that you guys would have done? Because I'm assuming that is okay, but the work that you have done for other producers over the years, how are things with publishing and royalties in general with those things?
Well, whoever produces it, basically what happens is I just get an advance and we just accept.
Okay. So that was the arrangement.
All we're going to see. And we just accept it because if they can make it happen, great. We will make something off of shows and stuff when the song becomes popular. And if it doesn't happen, then we haven't lost anything, really, That's how we look at it.
That's the approach.
Unprofessional, but that's how it works.
Yeah, a lot of people say that for choose still. say that's not the right way to go about
Yeah,
it.
it isn't, but that's the reality.
Spreadsheet for job on these things.
Because whoever you work with,
Right.
unless you're going to be signed to them, why are they going to invest all this big promotion and stuff of you?
Right. So as I said earlier, I know that on the side where you and Errol do production work, the thing business wise is very stable there.
Yeah.
And some of the work that you would have done for other people, you still get publishing and royalties, and there are some stuff still out there that can be brought under the umbrella.
Yes, we're still working on it.
Definitely, I understand that, yeah, man. Looking back at the journey, yeah, musically speaking, is there, conversations in your head or conversation with your husband that you wish you had approached something musically different? Or I guess the long and short of it, are there any musical regrets for JC Lodge when she assessed the journey thus far?
I think there was, I don't know if Errol wants me to share that we had an album that Sony was behind, Sony Japan.
Oh, okay.
And while that was in the works, they were, preparing to promote it. Another producer approached us to do an album, and this was earnings for us, and we needed to earn, so we dealt with this company just to do this one project. But Errol said to me that he thought that was a mistake because Sony wasn't pleased and they stopped
that
the
fell
promotion
through
because they were pushing "Home Is Where the Heart Is." That album, Tropic of Love. They were pushing that, and I remember Third World was touring Japan at the time, and they saw me on these, big billboards, and they were like,
doing the groundwork.
JC, boy, you're going good at Japan, they were very impressed.
Right.
So I thought, wow, something must be really working out there,
So you wish you hadn't done that.
Yes, because that could have been a much huger
Could have
market
been,
for me.
yes, definitely.
Than it ended up
Definitely.
being. Yeah.
I can see that still. I'm sat here and I've listened here. What gives you, because I know that there have been struggles and challenges, just having the conversation, but musically speaking, what gives you joy when you think about it or you have a conversation from a musical perspective? So despite the fact that the road has been a little bit, bumpy and full of pothole and thing, what musically it happened, it still make you smile. Say, yes, that is still a part of the journey of JC Lodge.
Writing a song that turns out really well is a joy. Doing a performance that people come up to you afterwards and, boy, I love that,
Right.
JC. Oh, you sing so beautifully. And those things are the rewards. That's what keeps you going.
I know you mentioned earlier painting. Because I didn't know that you actually painted and sold stuff. You still painting?
No, because now I am teaching primary 3 times a week. It's I'm
okay.
a cover teacher, so
Right, okay.
I'm very flexible. Music is my number one thing, and I do teaching to supplement that. And if I have a big tune, then maybe that would be put aside. But right now I haven't got the big tune.
Right.
Well, I've got big tunes, but people don't know it yet. So. So in the meantime, my creativity is used in different ways. I do drawings for the children. I do jewelry. I make my own jewelry.
Okay, nice.
Like this and these things. And what else do I do? I help design my outfits or create them from scratch, even sometimes.
You're right. So your creativity is being used up in many different ways. Yeah. And if, I guess I can't ask that. I was going to ask if it was music any at all from the beginning. What is that thing that you love enough that is what you would be doing now?
It would probably have been something in the arts, probably painting and acting. I do.
And as I say, acting, has there ever been a situation where you have actually gotten an opportunity to use your acting skills officially, formally?
Well, I did acting in Jamaica before we left. I was doing acting with Louis Marriott.
Okay.
So I did quite a few reviews with him, and I did Royal Palm.
Right.
And what else? Yeah, that's basically. But acting, you do when you're singing as well. You're acting.
Right.
But
a producer, a director, sit down and act out a script and publish it. I think that would be nice as well.
Yeah.
Probably your own story.
Yeah, maybe one of these days. Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, we know that Someone Loves You, Honey, Telephone Love are the marquee songs in terms of popularity and fame in the catalog. But what I've come to learn doing this, sometimes the songs that are most popular are not always the most commercially successful songs in the catalog. Is there a song in JC's catalog that has done well for her, commercially speaking, outside of those two songs?
Yeah, funnily enough, To Love Somebody,
To Love-
my cover of the Bee Gees, To
Right.
Love Somebody, is huge in Brazil.
Oh,
So, yeah.
another market.
Yeah, so we went there a couple of years ago and did a few shows.
Yes.
But it's a tricky market because they don't speak English.
English, right.
It's very-
Portuguese.
Yeah, it's Portuguese, so it's difficult to make the links.
Right.
Because we'd like to make some other links.
Well, you have a toe hole in there already. And
Eh?
just keep
Yeah, we have a
putting
toe
one
in.
more
Yeah,
toe and one
yeah.
more toe until
You know
a foot.
who's huge in Brazil? Eric Donaldson. And a lot of, the older artists
Right,
that do
right.
that more kind of, it's almost like a country kind of
I know
reggae
Brazil is
song.
an expanding market for especially old school reggae artists.
Yeah, they love that more than the new stuff.
Yes.
They do, because we've shoved our new stuff at them. Here, I don't just have that. Look, listen to these. And they're,
Right.
oh, yeah, to love somebody. We love to love somebody. They're just stuck on that. So,
Is there a song in your catalog that resonates with you more than the others? In your quiet time, that is a song you sing most often when you're driving, when you're doing stuff around the house?
I like my jazzy reggae songs
Oh,
a lot
yeah?
because I love jazz.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Vocal
done
jazz, not-
Jamaica Jazz and Blues?
I haven't. I'd love to do something like that one of these days because I've written some jazz songs as well, and I've got my reggae jazzy songs. So I think
Okay.
that could work, and then I could put in a few standards as well. So
Yeah, makes sense.
that's something else I could try.
Yeah. Is there a song or an album in the catalog where you feel, based on the quality of the work, the body of work, got no justice?
I'd say most of them. Most of them have got no justice because most people haven't heard them. But I have a lot of songs that are not love songs that are very meaningful to me. You know, like Crisis, which is talking about the struggles that we go through in life, and that sometimes the pressure builds up so much that, all you can do is just cry to release the tension. Yeah. Is that going to affect us?
It's okay. It's one of those things. Crisis is a single or it's on an album?
It's on an album.
Which album is that?
Which
To
album?
the Max, that's the album that you should be mentioning. That's the one that we always talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To the Max.
To the Max?
Yes, it's on To the Max.
Okay. To the Max, I think was 1993. 1993. Dear, well, yeah, man, 1993. Okay.
So,
Crisis.
So I've got a song like that. I've got other songs about, different struggles. It's not, I don't just write love songs. And so I would love for some of those other themes to be brought out. And just recently I've written a song called Better Days. Better Days. Which is based on, it's a song I hope that will be lasting. It's not only to be, restricted to the aftermath of Melissa.
Oh, so it was, okay.
So it's, telling Jamaican people to hold on, be strong, help
and
is
it's a
coming.
Better Days.
Better Days. And it's also a song of gratitude to anybody that helped in any way, and is still helping.
Yes.
So, yeah, I write lots of different themes, but most people don't know this because they're stuck on Someone Loves You, Honey, Telephone Love. But if I keep hammering it across in every interview, maybe somebody will make even one person go, all right, let me check out, see what else she does. So I won't stop.
Yes, I know you made mention. We know that you're very big in the Netherlands, right?
Well, I was.
You was.
Not anymore. We have to try and somehow
rehash that.
Bang on that door again.
And they said that you have gotten some love in Brazil as well.
Yeah.
Right? So outside, and I know you work the United States.
Yes.
Right?
I've got a Polynesian fan base as well.
In the United States?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the West Coast.
Okay. So outside of those markets, Holland, Brazil, the US, where else have you gone to perform?
Japan. Canada. Caribbean. Haven't been to Africa yet. That's
Oh.
somewhere I'd like to.
Or you just answer one
reach.
question.
Yes, I'd love to reach.
Anywhere in particular, or just Africa?
Ghana,
Ghana,
Nigeria, West Coast.
I think they would love you in
more-
Kenya.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like that. Yeah, I wonder how they would see me though. I don't know, if that
No,
comes into it.
I want to tell you, a lot of people watch it, especially from West Africa.
Yeah.
A lot, because you look in the comments, a lot of producers and watches from that part of the continent. So you never know. Them just love music, no matter music they love.
Right.
That is what I have observed with the Africans. Music they love. You understand?
Yeah.
So don't worry about that, because whole heap of Celine Dion and Mariah Carey and then people that listen to you. So it shouldn't even be a problem.
Just like in Jamaica, I remember once years ago they had this little girl. I don't know what it was, a competition or something that asked her. Yes, I think it was like a quiz, and then they asked her who is her favorite. She had to name 2 of her favorite female Jamaican singers, and she said something like Marcia Griffiths and Celine Dion. I thought, well, that's so typical because we just love music. We don't really, watch where somebody's from.
Yes.
We embrace everybody.
For the promoters and soundmen out there who don't know how to find JC Lodge.
Errol O'Mealy. Everybody knows how to spell Errol here because that's a very popular Jamaican name. And his WhatsApp number, if you're calling from here, you have to put 01144, then 7918606848. I think that's right. So Instagram is JC Lodge Official. My YouTube, as I told you before, is JC Lodge Music. And then you can find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook fan page. That's it. I haven't done TikTok or any of those other.
And which songs you get the most requests for through dub plates?
Oh, it's usually Telephone Love, Someone Loves You, Honey, Make It Up to You, sometimes More Than I Can Say.
So JC a sound killer.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You see, during COVID, that was my income.
Dub plates.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I was
Because a lot of online clashes were going on and them something. Yeah, man, trust me. That is what was happening, man.
Yeah. I was like, wow. I mean, COVID was a terrible thing, but
Yes.
boy, for me, it was.
But understand, many artists would have shared the same sentiment.
Yeah.
How are people able now, because we know that we're in a time when people stream music. I know you mentioned Facebook, but what is the situation with the other digital platforms, the Spotify and Apple Music and all of these places? Are we able now to go and stream JC Lodge's music on these platforms?
Yeah. I'm available on them, aren't I?
Yeah, I got over 200,000 monthly listeners Spotify.
On Spotify? Yeah, I think I go on, man.
It's not great
Yeah, well.
compared to some, but it's better than
Over
nothing.
100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
It's we're trying to,
Expand.
improve. We're trying to improve it
Yes.
because we realize that that's the way to go.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come natural to me. I'm not a technical person. I just feel like if I've done a good song, and people should just appreciate it. But that's
not really certain.
It doesn't go like that at all.
Yeah, because the thing is that a lot of the music is being streamed, so you have to put it where people go for find it. It's just the way of the world.
I know.
You understand? And the thing has changed.
Yes.
But I'm sitting here, and before me ask, because them are going to murder me. I'm tell them murder me if me not ask if you sing a few songs. So, right? But before we get there, just sitting down listening to you, you are able to verbalize and vocalize the struggles, the achievements, the high points and the low points in a very warm way. I really and truly appreciate how you are able to spin these things. And your personality, meeting you for the first time, the personality is wonderful. I like.
Thank you. I liked yours as well when I saw you on your interviews. I said,
Blessings,
boy, he's
man,
always chuckling. Pleasant guy, You don't make anything bother you too much.
No.
Maybe behind the scenes.
No, not really. We kind of, but we just not really play certain games. You understand?
Yeah.
But in general, and having spoken to you and done the research, I didn't know that there were so many bumps along the bumpy road, but you have found ways thus far to overcome a lot of them. And I also know that how we stay with the music in Jamaica when we want the people them no, so we stay. But what I've learned, and I've said it a few times so far, is that you see the power of good music. I have spoken to many artists who them do some song and move on, and them get a phone call, say the producer here, or somebody at Hollywood, or this artist overseas, and the thing change again. The power of good music.
Yeah. It never
Good music
dies.
can never die.
Yeah.
You understand? So
That's what
be not dismayed.
We keep up that mantra.
Yeah, I just
Good
keep-
music never dies. Hold on to
Yeah.
your faith.
Just keep
one day.
putting in the work, and one
Yeah.
day the outcome that you ultimately want to see is
Yeah.
still there, man. Still young, still vibrant.
Well,
you
I don't know about the
understand?
young, but I do try to keep vibrant.
As in based on the appearance, you understand? And things.
Yeah.
So just keep doing it, and
Yes, we
hopefully with
do.
an interview like this and others that you will do will also develop a greater appreciation, not just for you as an artist, but the body of work that you, because me have some albums to go stream now. You understand? I just saw the thing go, you understand?
Yeah.
So we need to become more familiar with good music. Certain type of music have enough fan base and enough attention. And we keep on saying we're not getting enough good music, but we're not seeking it out
when
either.
people
That
say
is
that,
it.
I don't agree with
We're
them.
not seeking
Good
it out.
music is being made
You
all
understand?
the time.
Because see,
Yeah.
a little political now. Kesnan did the other day a lot of noise. Like I've been listening to Kesnan from 2013. You understand?
Yeah.
And enough people now are going like, I yesterday them start sing.
Yes.
Because we're not
They don't
seeking
know
out
about
good
him.
music.
Yeah.
You understand? So no make them trouble, you lady JC. Just go and do the thing.
Yeah.
I'm hope the African thing come true. As me tell you, say, man, them are Africa. Do
Yeah.
the thing right. You understand? I know a lot of people from there watches the channel, watches the interviews. You understand? And that is how they get to link some of the art. I have had situations where not a booking, but man call me, teach, you know where I try to find this man? We want him here, so. We want him there, so. I've had conversations with teach, how much you take me for charge them? Then brother, me don't know about that. Go do it. Yeah, that's the thing about it. So just go on to the work. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down as one of the things that then teach or come in and interview the ladies them. I love the ladies them in a lady JC. But sometimes the ladies have hard to find. You understand what I mean? Hey.
Oh.
It rough out there, but I appreciate it. You understand? It's been a while since we met the link, and it just happened now.
Yes.
So we give thanks. So for the fans out there,
The fans I've already gained,
Right.
thank you so much for following me, for appreciating my music. And for new fans, please check out my music. And maybe you've heard your mother enjoying something from me, or your grandma. But, I might have something, on YouTube that you can relate to as well, because I write all different kind of topics and, lovely different backings, so check me out. YouTube, JC Lodge Music.
Lady JC, me and make a quick little medley with any trees. Me not even gain a try. So just give me one quick medley of some songs you want the people to remember are here.
Well, I know you know these already, so I'll just, for those of you who can't quite remember who I am, you'll remember these songs. Telephone love, you sound so sweet on the line. Telephone love, you make my day every time. And you'll know someone loves you, honey, no matter what. I just want you to be my guy. Someone loves you, honey, more than anything in the world. And a little bit of my latest release. Better days are coming. Thank you, sister, for your care. Better days are coming. Now my brother is here. Helping hands and giving hearts. Bring the light back to my dark. Better days are coming. Oh, better days, better days. I am proud, I am strong. I know where I'm coming from. I am a reggae woman, Born with the rhythm in my bones, blessed with mellow tones. It was my destiny to be this way. Warmed by a bright Jamaican sun, every breath's a hum. My heart drums a beat to repeat what my soul longs to say. I'll just leave you with that.
Lady JC Lodge and friend, you have my ticket money already put on. Get it done, you understand? And also that series with TVJ,
Yes.
either get it into the public sphere or relaunch.
Yes, we're definitely doing that.
Pick me up on every day.
I know. They never stop.
They never
so
stop.
it's an ongoing program.
Yeah, man. So it's a joy, and thanks so much.
you.
And all the musical aspirations that you have that are not yet realized, I hope that in time, with time, over time, that you tick them off the list one by one.
Thank you very
It's
much.
a joy.
It's a great wish.
It's
Thank
a joy,
you.
man. Blessings,
My pleasure.
man. Blessings.
Teach them. Always make sure the message I reach them.